Warhammer 40k Darktide came out back in November of 2022. Fat Shark made the game after their insanely successful Vermintide work, and while the latter received better reception than the former, I have to say that I love them both, and now that Darktide's had a big update, it's time for a revisit. Hey there, this is Robert with Society Case Files coming to you with another Warhammer report. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and drop a like on the video. The footage you're seeing comes from several missions that I ran in Darktide over the past few days. First off, I've always loved this game from the very beginning. I know that all reviews show mixed, but for me, it's been a blast. Over the last 2 years, they've put some serious time into the game, refining several elements and adding new systems to grind for. While I'd argue that some of them are fairly pointless, they can still be fun to chase. Let's deep dive some of the good and the bad. Combat in this game is awesome. I hop between the Zealot and the Veteran, which are basically melee and ranged respectively. At least the way I play them. There's nothing quite like using my ultimate power with the Zealot, throwing myself into a horde of enemies with an Eviscerator, just chopping them up and watching pieces fly, or falling back to a support position with the Veteran. You can pop headshots with the Recon Lasgun. Everything feels weighty. The sound helps emphasize the fact that you're chewing through bone and skin, tearing heretics up into tiny pieces. It's really nasty, especially when you just start piling up the bodies. There's been some fights when I'm just swinging wildly trying to get a horde to stop advancing, where you're just wading hip deep in bodies. It's absolutely insane. So the guns themselves also pop in a specific way when you, say, score a headshot, and it's just satisfying because you know what you did, and even if they're really far away and you only barely see them, you can hear that sound and you know what happened. Dodging really works in the game. It pretty much steals directly from Vermintide, where in that you're doing a lot more melee than in this one, for sure. But for example, if you're playing the elf and you're using 2 daggers, you might dodge to the left away from an enemy as they swing at you and just start ripping up their flank. And that motion, moving around them, it feels very natural, and it actually works super well within the game. And what I like the most about that is that you can actually avoid taking a lot of damage. It's not a situation where you are absolutely going to get morched all the time. There are instances in Darktide where you're going to encounter just so many enemies that they might overwhelm you, especially if you're not playing a melee role. Like if I'm not in my Zealot role and I'm doing the Veteran, there are moments where I can get mobbed and get taken down pretty quick, which is also kind of fun because it does incentivize you to keep your distance and fulfill your role. This game, much like Vermintide, it rewards you for sticking together, and it can be really punishing if you stray from the group. But the gameplay itself has always been awesome, and it's always been a rewarding experience to stick with the group and make things happen. The parts that they keep tinkering with come mostly from the systems outside the fighting, like primarily when you're messing with your gear in between missions. This free update that came out, they call it Unlocked and Loaded. It overhauls the way weapons can be improved and altered, allowing you to basically have more options when it comes to your loadouts. They added a mastery system, so different weapon types can be leveled up. An example is my Recon Lasgun. Right when I started out, I had so much garbage gear that I was able to trade that for experience towards that particular weapon. And I got it up to like level 9 right off the bat. It looks like there's around 20 levels total. And as you advance them, you can buy into these blessings. You get points that go into blessings. It has a specific blessing level. So at level 1, you can buy level 1 blessings. And after you get enough blessings, it will advance your overall blessing to 2. Now you can advance whatever you've already had to level 2, and so on. Think of them as bonuses granted to the weapons, like increased reload speed, or maybe makes you faster when you kill a certain number of enemies or sweep through a whole bunch of them with your weapon. The problem I have is that the percentage points are so low that I'm not even really that sure you'd notice until much later. So, like when you're in the thick of battle, 1 extra percentage point doesn't make that much of a difference, especially in the lower levels. And it's super neat to stack these stats and try and do some theory crafting. It's just, I can't imagine that it's all that necessary until the dramatic end game. It's not going to make the difference between a success and a failure in anything from level 1 to 3. But, like, I've stacked some things like my wounds on my zealot, which come from a different type of source than the actual weapons themselves. Those come from your support items. And so basically she can go down more often without having to be rescued. So people can get her up more often, which is cool. And I think that can contribute to a success or failure in a mission. But some of these other percentage points don't really do all that much. With my zealot having that extra stuff, it just gives me more chances to stick with the group before we find a Medicae station, which will effectively heal all my wounds. So it's probably not even really that necessary either. It's just really neat to see the bars in that case. And that kind of brings me back to the point that while the gameplay is awesome, the stuff that you're doing outside just doesn't feel like it impacts it enough. And I'd like to see it even more. Now, the funny part is that let's say you did max out all of your blessings to the point you have the highest level and you're able to tackle some of the highest end content. I think these things might make it feel like you have a chance more than giving you an advantage over it. So in some cases it would be nice to feel a little overpowered, and maybe with all those blessings you could like do a level 3 or 4 mission and just trounce it. But then the super higher level ones, you'd just be sort of in line to succeed, and it would still be a challenge, but it wouldn't be as ridiculous as if you went into them with a bunch of level 3 blessings. So I haven't gotten there. I don't like the grind that much, and when it gets super hard like that, you do need to have some communication, which I'll talk about in a minute. Without it, I don't really see any point in even trying anything past level 4. And maybe it's just because I'm terrible, but whatever the case, you really want to be able to talk to folks. So another addition to the free update is a new mission type called Operations. And they're basically shorter and a bit more cinematic. And let me tell you, this was absolutely essential. In the very first one that they've released, it involves you taking a train back after it gets hijacked by cultists. It's a timed event. In other words, you do have a specific amount of time before the train is going to basically crash. It only takes about 10 minutes to complete, and this is a huge welcome change from the 30-plus minute missions that you normally take on. In fact, I would say that this is probably a really great way to level up a brand new character if you're interested in getting someone to level 30, if you haven't already. They've also added a party finder. It's sort of a feature to find folks that are sort of like-minded, and maybe you'll even get into the voice chat I was just talking about needing. And in that harder difficulty, I'll say it again, communication will be absolutely key. Anything between level 1 and 3, you pretty much don't need it because it's not that hard. But if you're interested in tackling the toughest content, then that coordination will be absolutely essential. In fact, I wouldn't even try it. It's honestly just a waste of time, because even if you get halfway through, a massive horde could just end it in seconds if you're not chatting. Since launch, they've completely overhauled the talent tree as well. It used to be pretty darn simple, but it's got some more meat to it now. It offers a lot more flexibility, so you could really have two very different versions of the same character type. That's anything from increasing the amount of health you have to making your weapons work differently and allowing you to sort of mold the type of character you want to play. For instance, there's even a sort of tree that allows you to be more of a melee character with your veteran, which seemed weird to me, but it's actually pretty cool because they let you have like a stealth mode and you can kind of be a little bit of an assassin. And I think it's pretty slick. Once they rolled it out and I got the hang of it, it was a lot of fun. And they give you plenty of points to really play around and feel pretty tough once you've got the max level in it. And the best of all, you can swap them out at will between missions. And so you can try out different builds whenever you want. Something that might bother some people, kind of bothered me at first, is that the characters aren't really that pretty. In other words, they're just so freaking hideous that they remind me of Red Dead Redemption 2, the multiplayer character generator, where they're just like pretty bad. It kind of doesn't matter because, number one, it's a first-person game, so you're not really going to see them that much anyway. And number two, you end up putting on all kinds of gear, so you're hiding them for the most part. It's absolutely not a deal breaker. It's just something that I thought I'd have to point out. And this kind of leads me to a point about the cosmetics, because they do sell those for real money. Is it cool to show off the awesome 40k looking armor? Yeah, it's cool, but will you see it? Will you, the player, see it often enough to make it worth real money? I don't really think so. And yeah, you're in third person between missions when you're running around the ship getting ready to take on a new mission or change your gear or whatever, but I mean, that hardly matters. And yet, after I say all of that, I'm a tool and I bought some of it. So I don't necessarily recommend it, but you know, it is what it is. Do what you want, I guess. But probably the best part of the game is that all of the cool upgrades and feature improvements that I've been talking about, they've all been free. And while I'd argue that the weapon enhancements don't offer enough of an advantage to make them a grind worthy of chasing, they're still interesting, and they got me thinking when I was building my character and choosing what to enhance. If you want to do some pretty serious theory crafting, I mean, you absolutely could. You've got enough tools at your disposal to try and create an interesting build. And I'm pretty sure that the top end blessings will make a difference in the hardest content. So wrapping up, I'd say that Darktide is a fantastic experience, and I highly recommend you give it another look. It's fun, it's brutal, and there are a lot of ways to play. The lore and graphics are great. The weapons hit hard, and there's enough challenge to keep you coming back for a long time. Steam has the game for $40. There's an Imperial Edition for $60 that includes some unique outfits and some of the premium currency as well as the soundtrack. But as of this video, Cheap Shark shows that Fanatical can get you the Imperial Edition for $24, which is absolutely worth it. I would highly recommend it for that price. And always check Cheap Shark to see what's going on, because you can generally get some great deals from them. In fact, I just got Warhammer Total War 3 by using that. Probably saved about $10 from buying it on Steam. So always check. But anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for stopping by to check out my Darktide revisit. I hope you give it a try and have a great time. So what's your favorite Warhammer video game? Did you play Vermintide? Are you a fan of these types of FPS games? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time in the Hive.